Hello students, today we shall learn about the next cardiac emergency, which is called as the cardiac tamponade. Now what is cardiac tamponade? Due to various etiological factors which you will be learning in the upcoming slides, sometimes what happens is the heart muscle gets covered or just gets surrounded with some fluid. So which means this fluid is actually getting filled in the pericardial sac. That means between the heart muscle and the outer covering of the heart, or rather the outermost layer, which is the pericardium. So in this picture, it clearly shows you what is the pericardial sac and how is it covering the heart. And what happens is there is fluid buildup in this particular space. So that is the pericardial space. And this condition is called as the cardiac tamponade, where it puts immense pressure on the heart again. So what happens again here is the heart's contractility function has been compromised. Okay. So how do we define cardiac tamponade? It is a pressure on the heart that occurs when the blood or fluid builds up in the space between the heart muscle and the outer covering sac of the heart, which is the pericardium. So that is what happens, and what happens is the heart is no way finding space to expand or contract effectively, because that is putting a lot of pressure. Eventually, I'm sure you know the drill, what happens, because once the heart is not able to contract, then definitely there is not going to be enough cardiac output. So I hope it is clear what is cardiac tamponade, and from this diagram here, it is very, very thoroughly shown how the fluid is building up around the heart, and that is what puts immense pressure, and that particular condition is called as tamponade. Now, cardiac tamponade is a medical emergency for sure. Okay? It puts immense pressure on the heart, because you know when your heart is not able to pump effectively, means your rest of the body is not receiving that adequate or the required amount of blood supply, which can put the patient or the individual into a lot of problems, wherein there's going to be definitely organ failure because the organs are not receiving adequate amount of blood and oxygen. The patient can end up having a shock, and definitely there's going to be low blood pressure, and this can put immense pressure on the veins and on the blood vessels, causing distension of the vessels, and the ultimate complication can be death of the patient. So this is definitely an emergency. So anywhere, anytime when a patient collapses, it cannot always be a condition where it's going to be a heart attack. So there are various conditions that you have learnt by now. So just a person collapsing, it does not mean heart attack, or just a person fainting just don't mean that his he's just fainted, having his blood sugar low. So that is why we need thorough assessment, and this is important that every personnel working in the clinical settings need to be aware of this kind of situation. Now, what are the main causes of this condition? It could be because of accidental trauma, or it could also be when performing a procedure in the cath lab. There can be accidental insertion of the wire through the muscle layers, and with that with that very tiny hole that has actually occurred, because while inserting the small guide wires and all that, there can be some chances where it can actually pierce through the muscle, and that is enough for the fluid to escape into the sac. So all this becomes very, very critical situation, and the staffs has to be, or the nurses have to be in a situation where they can foresee and also act immediately. Now, the etiological factors can also be due to any sort of blunt trauma or industrial accidents. It can also be due to a condition where the cancer spreads and also starts affecting the heart muscle. It could be because of an aneurysm. Means there is aneurysm means nothing but the bulging of the blood vessel, and that is nothing but putting in immense pressure on the blood vessel, causing ballooning of the blood vessel. Okay, so what happens, the blood starts getting clogged up there, and eventually if the pressure builds up, that can actually rupture as well, and again that's going to cause a lot of internal bleeding. It could also be due to some kind of inflammation in the heart, that is due to pericarditis, any sort of inflammatory disease, or that is affecting the immune system, or when there are low levels, increased levels of risk factors which can impose a threat on the heart. So even those conditions are also important to keep a check on. And when also the individual is exposed to a lot of radiation, that is also causing problems, and any sort of heart disorders or heart ailments, or like a heart attack, or valve problems, anything like that. So that can also put a lot of pressure. Eventually the patient may end up having a kidney failure and also the infections that affect the. Now the pathophysiology, what happens during this condition? So due to all these etiological factors, it can so happen that there can be fluid buildup around the heart muscle, and as a result of which the heart's ability to contract effectively will not be happening. And what is going to happen is this fluid buildup will put that pressure on the ventricular chambers, and the ventricles will not be able to pump effectively, and the organs will not be able to receive adequate amount of blood supply as well as oxygen. So this is what is going to happen, and with that you will see the clinical manifestations in the patient, such as low blood pressure, because obviously yes, there is no enough cardiac output. So decreased cardiac output is one of the main important clinical signs and symptoms, and there's rapid fall in blood pressure, rapid breathing, panicking situation, patient may feel extremely weak, tired, fainting spells, dizziness, syncope, what is that, swollen neck veins, because again there is going to be pressure within the heart muscle, and that's going to put making causing a lot of congestion, and this causes edematous situation, which I hope you remember what we have learned in the previous conditions, how it can all work around, like going into the pulmonary and system as well. So that is how it causes the jugular vein distension, which is the veins in the neck, and there can be sudden loss of consciousness because of this, and eventually, if not attended to or if not given immediate medical attention, the patient can end up in death. And this condition, the complications again would be like the patient may end up having organ failure, ends up in shock, and ultimately cardiac arrest. And as I mentioned again, if not being attended to immediately and medical management is not being provided, yes, this can lead to the death of the patient. So what you need to understand is, with this fluid buildup around the heart, which is causing the external pressure, so that the heart is not able to expand. So that's restricting the heart's ability or the function to actually contract and push the blood out through the aorta. And that is what ultimately results in low cardiac output and the so-called signs and symptoms. Now, this picture here is actually showing you the pericardial effusion and the tamponade condition. So, as I told you, it's the pericardial sac, that is the outer covering or the outer covering or the sac that covers the heart, and this for some reason it causes this effusion, which is nothing but like the buildup of fluid into the pericardium, and this is actually being characterized by the Beck's triad. So, Beck's triad actually tells us the three important characteristics, which is hypotension, jugular venous distension, and muffled heart sounds, which is nothing but on auscultation you will start to hear this kind of muffled, like not regular heart sounds, but a murmur kind of sounds, and it's all nothing but the gushing of the fluid, and this is going to cause some kind of abnormal heart sounds. So this will also be seen on ECGs, and when you look at the ECG here, you can see how it's called as electrical alternance, and alternatively you can see the tall P waves again, and so this is the way that it's depicted on an ECG, and that's an echocardiogram picture there, which is showing you the pericardial effusion and the tamponade, that is in the black color, and this is actually showing you how much the heart is being enclosed or encuffed with this particular fluid around it, and which is going to put a lot of pressure. Most important characteristics associated when they talk about cardiac tamponade, you just have to remember the Beck's triad. So, which means triad means three, and Beck is a person who's given us this. So, it's called as a Beck's triad, and the three important clinical signs and symptoms that appears are hypotension, which is low blood pressure, extended neck veins, which is called as jugular vein distension, and also it is distant heart sounds, which are nothing but the muffled heart sounds that you hear because of due to the expanding layer of fluid inside the pericardium. So you just have to remember, and this picture again is showing you the clear indication of how the fluid is building up, and that is putting the heart under a lot of pressure. So that condition is called as tamponade, and just remember cardiac tamponade, and then immediately what has to come to your mind is the Beck's triad. Now, my clinical manifestations I've already discussed with you. So, the most important signs and symptoms you would see are anxiety, restlessness, low blood pressure, weakness, chest pain, chest discomfort. It can be radiating pain to the neck, shoulders, or the back. There's going to be trouble breathing, rapid breathing, Discomfort can also be relieved by sitting or leaning forward. Fainting, dizziness, as well as loss of consciousness. And as I mentioned, if again there is a delay in the patient receiving the medical management and in things getting sorted and investigated, again it can put a lot of problems where the patients can end up with organ failure and shock, and eventually diagnosis can be done, yes, by careful physical assessment, history collection, performing an electrocardiogram. Also an echocardiogram plays a very important role here, because you can actually see the heart and how it is being engulfed with this particular fluid around it, and showing the size of the ventricles and the amount of fluid that is actually filling the ventricles and how much actually comes out. Chest x-rays, thoracic CT, you can also do MRA, which is magnetic resonance angiogram, which actually shows you in detail about the heart, and also which is nothing but using the contrast. And again, paying immediate attention and the management provided to the patient as ASAP. Also, along with it, blood investigations, as I told you, the etiological factors could involve any sort of infection or inflammation as well, and so blood tests to rule out the infections, any sort of autoimmune disorders, or even for that you need to send the bloods. In case there's any condition or cause of cancer, again that also has to be ruled out, and also make sure it's probably best to have your serum electrolytes, the complete blood profile done, and paying more attention to in this etiological factors. The management for this pericardial effusion or the pericardial tamponade, the most important management that we can offer to the patient is the procedure called as pericardiocentesis. Okay, so what happens here? Now you know that the heart is engulfed with this fluid. So the best way to relieve the heart is to make sure you remove that fluid surrounding the heart, and that particular procedure is called as pericardiocentesis, which is performed to remove the pericardial fluid from the pericardial sac. So what happens? It's an emergency procedure. The emergency department, the patient comes in and into the emergency department. Once the patient comes in there, and if it is being diagnosed that yes, it is it's a pericardial effusion, and the diagnosis is a cardiac tamponade, then the cardiac cath lab team will be alerted, and they're going to be coming there ASAP and getting prepared for this particular procedure. So you will the cath lab team will be preparing for preparing for this particular procedure by setting up the tray. It's a sterile procedure, obviously. So there's a bit of a setup, and you need to perform this procedure once a patient comes in, which is called as a pericardiocentesis, means removal of the pericardial fluid from the sac. And how do we do that is like you inject, you give the local anesthesia, and there's actually a marking for that. So from you locate your the sternum, the xiphoid process, and then keeping the mark as your the left collarbone, the corner. And along with that, so this is done by the cardiologist or the interventionist, and you inject, and that is actually the landmark. So you do that, and then it's a big bore needle, and so this can be inserted between the 5th or the 6th intercostal space near the sternum. And once you do that, once immediately the needle hits the pericardium, and when you start withdrawing, you will start to see there's fluid come out. So there'll be light yellow fluid that is being drawn out of your big syringe, and this is what it looks like. So when the patient comes in, definitely the patient will not be able to lie flat on the table, so you have to put up the prop. The patient will be almost in a semi-fallow position, administer oxygen, and the setup should be very, very quick, and the preparation. So once it is there, you can see how the surgeon is actually inserting that needle there. So that has actually gone into the pericardium, and in the syringe you will see that light yellow fluid. So that is nothing but the pericardial fluid, which is actually filled up in the pericardial sac. And you remove as much as you can, and the patient is always monitored. The ECG is being hooked up, pulse, ECG, blood pressure, saturation, heart rate, everything is there. So you will eventually start to see the patient's parameters improving. So once the tension is actually removed, and when the heart is able to expand and contract, that itself will bring out changes, and that can be seen on the monitor. So this is actually the procedure in detail. So you need, for this also, again, it's an important procedure where it has to be discussed with the patient and the family, and again it needs informed consent to be taken. The patient and the family has to be explained thoroughly about what is going to be done, and they need transparency about it. So the team has to explain properly what they're going to do, and depending on that, you get this consent form signed, and the patient's shifted immediately to the cath lab for the procedure. And once it is done, obviously the patient is going to be in the coronary care unit for a few hours, where the patient is going to be observed and monitored thoroughly and closely, watching for the parameters, the vital signs, the blood pressure, indeed very important. And also the patient may be on certain medications, as I mentioned. And once the fluid is actually being extracted, as we saw in the procedure, a sample of it will be actually sent to the pathology for investigation, just to rule out what can be the cause and what has been seen in that particular sample. Based on that, the medications can be started. Definitely the patient's condition will be improved. So once after the procedure, there's always a drain which is attached, so the nurse looking out of the patient has to be very carefully looking at that and seeing the amount of output, documented, recorded in the patient's history, perform ECG as well as echocardiogram, very, very important, because echo actually shows you the heart, and also which actually shows you if there's anything surrounding the heart, or is it actually pumping as it should be. And also, what's the site of the drain? There should not be any sort of redness, swelling, or any kind of skin tear. So it has to be dry, nothing, no oozy, nothing oozing out. So also all that should be kept under control and keeping the area dry. And also, once the patient is back into consciousness and is able to communicate, you just talk to the patient and tell him what has happened. That is going to relieve as well. And the medical management will include antibiotics, also the close careful monitoring with echocardiogram, medications, fluids, that is to increase the blood pressure, analgesics to control the pain, anti-inflammatory medications, because I told you it can be any sort of infection and inflammation to the heart muscles. And if there's a big loss of fluid or volume, then obviously that can be, the patient may at times need a blood transfusion as well. Nursing management for this would be, yes, the nurse would be providing the patient, providing comfort, provide oxygen, bed rest, legs elevated, also making sure the IV site or the IV cannula is secured. Even the fluids are connected, of course it is flowing properly, there is no swelling, no pain, and also instructing the patient to keep his arms still or straight, not to bend them. Make sure the patient's ECG electrodes are being connected, and ECG monitoring is being done, monitor the vital signs, perform the chest x-ray, and also in case of, the patient is being sent for pericardiocentesis, make sure the cath lab team is also informed and get the patient ready, the pre-procedure, pre-prep done effectively, getting the informed consent, and then transfer or shift the patient to the cath lab ASAP and hand it over to the patient, staffs there, and the patient is all set to go for the procedure. Again, the post-procedure, again, very important, will be monitoring oxygen administration, monitoring the output, because I told you because of this, there's definitely going to be low output. So once the fluid is actually removed, means the heart is able to pump effectively, means yes, there should be a proper and adequate output. So monitoring the output, and also, as I told you, watch and observe the drain site, watching the vital signs, performing ECG, answering the questions of the patient, and just to reduce his anxiety and apprehension. And also auscultation has to be performed, because we do not want to hear any of those murmurs or the muffled heart sounds. And observe the patient, like when you're doing a physical assessment, because we do not want any kind of venous distension, like as I mentioned. There will be distension of the neck veins, and even if when you're palpating the abdomen, maybe it can be swollen. So all these are signs of the right side of congestion, and eventually putting a lot of pressure on the organs as well. So slowly the patient's control, and yes, the patient can be shifted back to the ward. And as I told you, once they go back, explain to the patient and the family regarding the medications, what he's supposed to follow, why this condition would have occurred, explain to them so they have the, a clear understanding of this particular condition, and explain to them what they're supposed to be observing for while the patient is has been discharged and goes back home. And in case of any other comorbidities, instruct them how to make sure to look after the person quite well, especially with case of any kind of infections, in case of the hypertension or diabetes, how do we need to make sure and monitor and record the parameters, and follow a healthy diet, lifestyle, physical activity, reducing weight, Also improvising on the improvising the lifestyle, which is inculcating good physical activity, also making sure the medications are taken on time, and explain each one in detail to them what is the importance and when they would take it, and in case of a missed dose also what they're supposed to be doing, and very importantly telling them to keep up to their follow-up appointments. So it's important, and even during the follow-ups you need to tell them that yes, they will be performing an echocardiogram just to check on the heart again and make sure there's nothing surrounding the heart and the heart is actually pumping, performing. So this also includes the prevention. So prevention again would, as I mentioned to you, it will revolve around your lifestyle habits, your weight, getting an adequate amount of exercise, a healthy diet, cutting yourself with all those bad habits like alcohol, smoking, illegal drugs, and making sure you keep all your comorbidities under check. Your medications under check as well, because how long you're supposed to be having the medications, because all this can eventually pose a threat on the heart. So it's very important you stick to that and just follow the instructions very, very carefully. And as we finish this topic, thank you for your time.